All right, welcome. My name is Quinn Wickham. I'm Proposal Manager with Knowledge Enterprise. I have a couple of guests, although unfortunately, Robert Nemenich is at a conference and he said that he expected he would be able to connect. He fully expected to be able to connect on time. Bhavan wasn't exactly sure, so I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed. But I want to go ahead and move on and get started with this anyway. Again, this is proposal development number 4, distilling your message. And I'll get started. The agenda that I'm going to talk about today won't be too long. It's basically what is a distilled message, why you need it, and how would you make one. This topic sort of came up because we often suggest in sort of the proposal development arena that you should think about having some kind of message prepared. And when you talk, when we often say, especially when we talk to program officers, so we'll kind of get more into that, into the why, but kind of give a sort of context of this within the proposal development workshop series. So really the first question is, what is a distilled message? Or really in this case, what do I mean by distilled message? And again, it's kind of in relation to research projects and how would you use it in thinking about sort of developing a research proposal. So when I'm thinking about a distilled message, I'm thinking about something that is really pretty short. I want something that could be crafted within a couple of paragraphs, no more than about a half page of text. It could be a very short verbal presentation of like a minute or less, or maybe it's just like one PowerPoint slide that you're going to share out, like you might the half page of text. So very short pitch, and the main point of this, well, really, why the question is why would you need something particularly that short? Well, first of all, I want to kind of bring this in the context of sort of communicating ideas. And the issue here is that if you're really needing to explain your research project to somebody, that is something that really takes some sense of shared understanding, and it takes some time. A lot of these complex ideas really require a good sense of attention from the person that you're talking to. And they want to be sort of fully attentive to listening to you, and they need to be free from distraction. So this is really about getting a good sort of shared understanding of your research topic. With that in mind, distilling a message actually doesn't really work out very well for really conveying a full understanding of your research message. So what we really want to do is just pitch enough of an idea that grabs a listener's attention in a short amount of time. So what really is the goal of a distilled message then? The goal is really to make it to the next meeting. What you want to be able to do is give enough information that the listener is going to say, you know what, I want to hear more about this. So let's make sure we have time to discuss this. So that's kind of what it is. Grabbing listeners' attention so that you can just get enough of their excitement about your project that they want to learn more about it. So what kind of, where would this happen? So imagining some of the scenarios here. It might be that you're looking for some feedback from a senior peer researcher on an idea. And in that case, you really want to have that sort of time set up with them to be able to fully describe what you're planning or discussing. It could be a potential collaborator. You might, meet them at a conference or something, and you want to just grab their attention enough to say, would you be interested in joining me on this particular project? And probably in the most important thing in terms of proposal development is really pitching something to a program officer. You want to set up that time to be able to have a discussion with them. So really this is just a short pitch of an idea. It could just be asking them, does this generally fit within the particular program goals that they're looking for. But in any case, you still would like to set up a time for a conversation that you can kind of talk it over with them. So just think about some of the places. You might be in a conference. There's a lot of people around. It could be an email message you're sending out. Could be a very short phone call that, again, you're trying to set up something later. So that's kind of the scenarios where you might use something that's this short of a distilled message. So the next thing is really, how would you go about making one? And you could just take a summary page and try to kind of reduce it down to something, but there are actually some tools that can really help with this. So the first thing to think about in terms of these tools is really the audience and the context. And I really pretty much just went over that with you. So who are you going to be pitching this to? Who will I be pitching this to? How much time will I have? That's kind of an important thing, because you might be able to stretch out your message a little bit if you know you have a little bit more time. And really, are there going to be other distractions? Are you going to be, at a conference or something? So again, the audience, senior peer researcher, you can kind of think about, all right, they already know something about the area. You might be able to be, you could be a little bit more technical if you wanted to on that. Could be a potential collaborator, especially if it's interdisciplinary. You really have to think about what are you going to tell them. And a program officer is going to really require certain things that you think is going to be important for them to know. And I'll kind of get into more of that in just a minute. So again, the context. Is this a conference where there's going to be a lot of people around, and maybe the one person you're trying to tag about this may be surrounded by other people? You may have 15, 20 seconds to grab their attention. So what can you say in a couple of sentences that will stop them in their tracks and say, you know what, I want to hear more about this? It could be an email. Again, you have a little bit more time, but as you know, we are inundated with a lot of emails, so you've got to be able to put something in there that captures their attention without having to scroll through and read a very long message. Or it could be capturing them by phone. You may not know, if you give them a call, for example, if you really have time to go into in-depth description of the research. Or maybe you just want to call them and set up that meeting later on. So I mentioned the thing about the program officers. If you're going to be talking to a program officer, you really do want to, here's a couple of tips on sort of preparing yourself when you're thinking about creating a distilled message. One of those things is to really understand the program or the agency mission that they're involved with. So you can tailor that sort of your pitch to kind of fit what they would be interested in. The second thing is, if you already have the RFA, you already have the solicitation in front of you, a great place to look for sort of what kind of nuggets of information that you could put into a very short message would be actually looking for the review criteria. So in the solicitation, there'll be a section that describes that review criteria. Find that, and that can give you some basically questions that they're asking that you can sort of tailor into a very short message. So some of the tools that we can use that can be very helpful. The first one actually can be the basis for the others as well, and is really good for providing a short message or distilling something down that could be a couple of paragraphs. It's the Heilmeyer Catechism. So George Heilmeyer was a former DARPA director, and he created a set of questions for the agency officials to really think through and evaluate the proposed research programs. And this set of questions provides a really nice foundation for thinking about what is some of the basic information that you'd want to pull out of a research program to sort of understand its impact and who it would affect, etc. So those questions are these. What are you trying to do? And very importantly, articulate the objectives using no jargon. Jargon takes time to figure out. especially if you're just outside of that specific research field you're into. I mentioned that if it is a peer within, your field, you might be able to throw some jargon in, but pretty much anyone else, you want to avoid that as much as possible. So how is it done today? What are the limits of current practice? And this is kind of gets a little bit at the innovation of what you're trying to propose. Again, what is new? This is also kind of that innovation. Where are you, moving this from? And it should be something that's a little bit more than just incremental, sort of foundational change that you're proposing here. And importantly, who's the audience for this? Who's going to care? Is it your field you're impacting? Is it sort of a broader community, sort of outside research? Is it something that's applied? Now the Heilmeyer goes into a few other questions here. He asks about risk. He asks about cost, the length of a project, and what are some of the final exams to check for success. Now, I think these last four are important questions, but when I'm thinking about really trying to distill that message, I'd probably only bring those last four in if that was something that, the agency or maybe the RFA mentioned that in the review criteria. So really, I like to think about these first four. I think with these first four, you really could develop a good condensed message, a distilled message about your project. So taking that, you could really weave out those couple of paragraphs. A couple of other examples here. The first one is this quad chart. The quad chart is used often in Department of Defense Department of Defense, NASA uses it. I'll show you a couple of examples from NASA and DOE, but basically it's also just taking in a few words, trying to break down some basic concepts of the research into these categories. And it gives you a good opportunity to kind of use bullet points, put these together. This shows certain areas. Usually when agencies ask for a quad chart, they ask specifically, this is what they want on the quad chart. But you could kind of tailor your own if you're not really sure and just want to sort of present a distilled message. So NASA provided this as sort of an example of some of the areas: objective, approach, milestone. A lot of these quad charts ask for an image as well. So if you can come up with an image, it's a great way to sort of graphically represent like to say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you could put in a simple picture, another great way of distilling that message. Here's another one from the Department of Energy. This is something that you can easily Google. I Googled to find these, but like I say, you can sort of create your own. Recently, even I worked with a proposal recently that NSF even asked for a quad chart. So a lot of agencies, I think, are jumping on this. So the last thing, sort of model I want to talk about is a logic model. And this kind of works really well if you're doing sort of community work that might have sort of interventions or something like that. And so social science logic models work really well. Very basically, it's this: there's a problem, there's a project, has the inputs, activities and interventions, outputs, outcomes, and some sort of impact. And it could be as simple as this. This was a nice sort of model that I found, again, Googling it, in terms of how it could look, and a little more filled out. But you don't want to get this complicated. There's opportunity for complicating this later. So again, you can look at these, but I want to come back to this. I want you to remember that when you're creating whatever you use, whatever method you use to do this, the idea here right now is grab the listener's attention and get it to where later on you can have an opportunity to really explain this and explain this fully to your audience. So the last part of this and how to is practice. This is something that is really worth, if you're going to have to verbally give this, it's really important to practice. Even if you write something down, share this out and get some feedback, right? If you're going to verbally present this, put yourself in front of a mirror set up a timer and see if you can get this down in 60 seconds or less. Talk to your family about it, especially, if you don't know exactly who you're going to pitch to, you want to make sure that it's a broad enough understanding that they'll get it. And you can ask them, is this something you actually would want to hear more about? All right. And then lastly, obviously, your peers within your own department, ship it out to them. This is something that really you could step into somebody's office for a minute, do your pitch, get some feedback. And the same thing, if it's just something written, share it out, let them take a look at it and get you some feedback. So practice here makes a big difference. This is not something that when you suddenly have 20 seconds at a conference to grab a program officer's attention, you want to start fumbling about, what you're going to say. So with that, I don't see that Pavan joined, but Bob, are you there?
I am here.
All right. So Bob here is from Regents Professor in Physics, and I've had the pleasure of working with him. He did a fantastic proposal and got an award on Department of Energy EFRC, and there was just something he did with that I think I'd really like him to share in terms of sort of preparing what a distilled message can look like. And then again, Bob, after that, any ideas you have for sort of pitching ideas to really program officers or anyone else?
Okay, so let me start with the proverbial, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I think that's the way all Zoom meetings start, or else can you see my slide? So I don't have a slide. So I just wanted to start out with a few things. And we put this proposal together for a center proposal. So I want to make some comments about sort of how that went together. And then I can come back to some other types of proposals. But when we started putting the center proposal together, and I was bringing people in and talking to them about it, we had 3 words that we used to describe what we wanted to do. And they all started with C. So we kept on saying, does it meet the 3 C's? And the first one is creative. So the creative aspect really meant, can we describe what we're doing quickly? And can we quickly say that it was a large step beyond the state of the art? So that's an important thing, that you can sort of say how what you're doing is a large step beyond the state of the art, and say that quickly. And that may be the most important thing to catch people's minds. The next thing is compelling. So can you find something that, okay, it's really good, but is it important? And this was really something that I think we kept on using when people would, our colleagues would propose, well, we need to do this to set the stage. That may be important, but it's not in your distilled message. What's in your distilled message is what's impactful and what is timely. So in the compelling, we kept looking for impactful and timely. And the third thing we talked about was collaborative. And collaborative is an interesting thing. We were trying to put together a team. And the important thing is for a team to solve a problem that's bigger than what an individual investigator would solve. So many times people talk about building a collaboration that can do things faster. That really isn't what you're after. You're really after synergy that is allowing you to solve a bigger problem. So those were the things that we put together. And the key was that we could express this in 3 sentences. And if you had a hard time expressing things in 3 sentences, then it was, some aspect was not clear, and you needed to sharpen that message. There was another aspect, is what is your title? So if you're walking along and you're asked to give an elevator speech, you don't have time to have a title that's 12 words long. You need to have a title that's something, 3, 4, 5 words long that captures the direction that you're going in. Now, myself, I've been a scientist, experimental scientist. I take data all the time. So what I'm most proud about is all the data I'm taking and how hard it was. But somehow, and that's what I always want to tell people about, but that's not what you want to tell people in this conversation. Somehow you have to get across the impact, the creative, the compelling, and the collaboration that's going to build a bigger problem and solve an important problem. So I think Quinn gave a lot of examples there. I just want to say, so that the center proposal that we just got funded, the title was Ultra Materials for the Electricity Grid. So that was it, Ultra Materials for the Electricity Grid. So that captured the attention. Another proposal I just got funded was electrons in diamond. And if people ever ask me what I do, I say diamond electronics, just a few words. So if you can capture your concept that you're trying to do into just a few words, that's a really helpful thing. And in some sense, following the outline that Quinn gave you, I think what I was focusing on is sort of what, why, and new, rather than some of the other topics, but I couched them in terms of creative, compelling, and collaborative with the 3 C's. One of the other points that I should make is that when you're talking to people, remember to include a period in your discussion so that you can come to a stop every so often and the person can comment back to you. And that's always very helpful because you want to build a conversation if you're doing this verbally. So I think those are some of the things that I'd like to share with you guys. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to comment.
Great, thank you, thank you. At this point, I would like to really just open this up for some questions. And also, if you have some experiences you want to share, I'd love to hear them. This is definitely something I think that's sort of conversation worthy to just know, what has been your experiences with, trying to pitch an idea, or did it work, or what did you find sort of useful in this? And I think I'm just going to leave it open. I mean, is there any? Let me know. What questions do you have? Faye, I will start with you.
So I wanted to know if Dr. Nemenich has written this down anywhere, because it seems like it's super concise. And having worked with Dr. Nemenich, I'm very impressed with how he's articulated it this far. Is it somewhere? Can I write it down for you and put your name on it?
Yeah, it'd be better if you did, but I have it right here at this little notepad.
Oh yeah, mail it over. That was just really impressive. Thank you very much for sharing that. I was very impressed. And note that I've been working with Dr. Nemenich for about 6 or 7 years, I think, in and out of our office. And so that really crystallized just an amazing amount of experience. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. What other questions do you have? Any questions on anything I presented, or anything for myself or Bob or Faye, who's been at this a while as well? No.
Juliana has a question, I think. She messaged me, so I'm gonna make her say it.
Okay. Yes, Juliana.
I messaged Faye. Sorry, I meant to message Robert, and he just called that out. Could you state so this is the first time I've heard that approach, but it makes so much sense. I have a background in communication. We always talk about the who, what, when, where, why, how. What were the 3 C's again? I didn't get a chance to write. I just got as far as collaborative, and then I didn't catch the rest.
Creative, compelling, and collaborative.
Thank you.
And and I'll go back because I have lots of questions. And then as you work with other people, Dr. Nemenich, do you use a creative, collaborative, like discussion format? Because one of the things Quinn recommended, which was go out and talk to people and pitch it and say, how does that land on you? How do you feel? How can I tighten it up? What do you think I'm saying there? You've over the years kind of honed that. Do you actually purposely go out and just kind of practice and take notes, or do you ask people to listen to you as you discuss what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you're trying to make an argument, sometimes what you hear and what somebody else's hears is different. So I think you just, especially you're trying to make this argument tight without extra words, without other stuff. I think you just have to try it out on people all the time. And you can start out with people who are close to you, who know mostly the same stuff that you do, but then you need to go out beyond that. You need to try it out on people who are knowledgeable, but not familiar with the topic that you're talking about, and make sure it works. Make sure that they feel it's creative, compelling, and collaborative.
Yeah, that's great. I love that idea of testing it on people sort of outside of your immediate expertise.
Yeah, but you got to also test it with people that you know too, because that's, you know, they're the ones that are going to tell you whether you're right or wrong. The other people are going to tell you whether it's good or bad.
That's good. All right.
I'm going to go back to, I know that you have a lot of experience working with sponsors, and in your experience with program officers and kind of pitching your ideas, have you found that program officers turn you off or walk away, or have they had a tendency to be more like how is that dynamic for you?
So it's hard. It's hard to get a program manager to listen to you. So every so often they come up to you, and you know, when they come up to you, they usually don't want you to write a proposal, but they'll come up because they know you know something and they have a question. And you have to remember, number one, to answer their question and think very carefully, and you know, answer their question, become a helper to them, contribute to them. And once you've done that, you can sort of see where some of their interests are, and you oftentimes, after you gain a credibility with working with a program manager, you can couch a new idea to them, and it can almost develop naturally if this occurs. So how does that happen? You know, your expertise needs to be recognized somehow. And that could be just going to conferences and making a presentation, and then, you know, just talking. But I think the first time you see a program manager, you get the program manager alone for a second. Making a pitch the first time you see the person is not always the most effective thing. If it's your only shot, it's your only shot. You got to make it work. But if you can find a way to sort of have a conversation with the program managers first, it's much more effective.
Sounds like that it's building a relationship over time.
Yeah, but you don't have a lot of time, you know, as all of us say. So you've got to use the opportunities when they come. And the program managers, they're all very busy, but they're also, they're trying to write proposals. So just like these DARPA guys, they're trying to write proposals to their bosses or their colleagues who are going to review their proposals and set up a project that they're going to then write an RFI for, or an RFC for, and or RFP for. So when you do get asked by the program managers for help, that's
That's great. What other questions do we have? Anything? Is there, all right, any last minute thing you want to add, Bob, before we wrap it up?
let's see, what did I say? Yeah, I think I said most of what I like is like I say, I talked about some of the things that I like to talk about best, and I say that those are usually not necessarily helpful. The things you're most proud about and stuff like that. What you need to do is talk about the creative, compelling, collaborative stuff, and to build that vision and be conversive. However you can set this conversation up, if you can make it a conversation, it really is 10 times more effective than if you're standing there making a presentation. So that's all. I'll leave you on that.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for a lot. That was a really good insight into dealing with program managers. All right. Really with that, I am just wanting to share with you that we're going to have some office hours on this topic on October 29th at 2:30. And really, this is just an opportunity to kind of chat about sort of maybe a messaging strategy that you've thought about, or you want to throw some ideas out about. And also, if you want to practice your pitch in front of others, this is a good opportunity to do that. And lastly, this is kind of small, but I just want to remind you that we have more PDW sessions coming up, and we look forward to seeing you at them. So with that, let me know if you have need anything or want a copy of the presentation. I'm not sure, LJ, if we just share that out, or well, I guess you share out the recording link, right?
Yes, I will share the recording and the slides out to everybody that's registered and that attended.
Okay, well, thank you all very much.